39 missed calls. The number glowed accusingly from my phone screen as I stared at it over my morning coffee. After 20 years of complete silence, they had finally found me. But there was one thing they didn't know. I wasn't the 5-year-old girl crying at that train station anymore. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how a harmless joke changed everything. I still remember that Saturday morning 20 years ago like it was yesterday. I was 5, wearing my favourite purple dress with the butterfly buttons, excited because Mommy and Daddy promised we were going on a special adventure to the city. I clutched my stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hopscotch, as we walked through the bustling train station. The sounds were overwhelming, announcements echoing through speakers, the screech of brakes, hundreds of footsteps on marble floors. "Emma, sweetie," Mum said, kneeling down to my level with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "We're going to play a game, okay?" I nodded eagerly. I loved games. "Daddy and I are going to hide, and you have to find your way home all by yourself. It's like treasure hunt." She laughed, but something in her voice made my stomach feel funny. "Let's see how she finds her way home," she called out to Dad, like I wasn't even standing right there. Before I could ask any questions, they disappeared into the crowd. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, swallowed up by the sea of strangers rushing past me. I stood frozen, clutching Mr. Hopscotch tighter, waiting for them to jump out and say "surprise," like they always did after their jokes. But they didn't come back. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2, then 6. I sat on a cold metal bench, my little legs dangling, watching every face that passed by, hoping one of them would be Mom or Dad coming to get me. People stared at me with concerned expressions, whispering to each other, but no one stopped. A woman in a blue coat asked if I was lost, but I shook my head. This was just a game. My parents would come back. The funny thing is, I wasn't even scared at first. I kept thinking this was just another one of their elaborate pranks, like the time they hid my birthday presents and made me search the entire house, only to reveal they'd forgotten to buy anything. Or when they told me we were moving to Disney World, let me pack all my toys, and then laughed when they said it was just kidding after I'd spent 3 days believing it. This felt like that, just bigger. But as the sun started setting through the station's tall windows, something shifted inside my 5-year-old brain. The understanding crept in slowly, like cold water seeping through a crack. They weren't coming back. This wasn't a game. They had actually left me here. The police officer who finally approached me had kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Hey there, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Emma," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Where are your parents, Emma?" I pointed vaguely toward the crowd. "They're playing hide and seek, but I think they forgot about me." That night I slept in a strange bed in a building that smelled like disinfectant and sadness. The social worker, Mrs. Chen, explained that they were trying to find my family, but something in her tone told me she already knew how this story would end. When they finally reached my parents 2 days later, the response was exactly what I should have expected. "Oh, we thought she'd figure it out and come home on her own. Kids are resourceful, right?" No apology, no panic, no frantic search, just mild surprise that their joke had been taken so seriously by the authorities. That was the last time I saw them, until this morning. I set my phone down and walked to my apartment window, looking out at the city that had become my real home. At 25, I'd built a life that 5-year-old Emma could never have imagined. I was a successful graphic designer with my own small studio, a cozy 1-bedroom apartment filled with plants and artwork, and a chosen family of friends who actually showed up when they said they would. The missed calls had started at 5 a.m. By the time I woke up at 7, my phone was practically vibrating off the nightstand. All from numbers I didn't recognize, but somehow, deep in my gut, I knew exactly who they were from. The voicemails were a journey through 20 years of denial. "Emma, honey, it's Mom. We really need to talk. Please call me back." "Sweetheart, I know you're angry, but we can explain everything. We've been looking for you for so long. Emma, this is about your father's inheritance. There are some legal matters we need to discuss. You're mentioned in his will." The last message was different, quieter, more desperate. "Baby girl, your daddy passed away last month. He left you something. Please just call me back. We made mistakes, but we're still your family." I stared at the phone for a long time after that last message. Part of me, a very small, very buried part, felt something that might have been sadness. But mostly I felt empty, like hearing about a stranger's death in the newspaper. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my best friend and the closest thing I had to a sister. "Coffee in 20? You sounded weird in your text last night." Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen from the children's home, though the coincidence had always amused us, was everything my birth family wasn't. She was reliable, honest, and had never once made me feel like an inconvenience. We'd met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and a shared love of terrible reality TV, and she'd become the family I chose. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from her at our usual cafe, watching her lawyer brain work as I explained the morning's calls. "So they found you," she said, stirring her latte thoughtfully. "After 20 years. Apparently. And your father died." "So they say." "Emma." She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You know I love you, and you know I support whatever decision you make. But maybe this is an opportunity for closure." I laughed, but there was no humour in it. "Closure? Sarah, they abandoned me at a train station when I was 5 years old. As a joke. What kind of closure could possibly make that okay?" "Not to make it okay," she said carefully, "but to finally hear them admit it wasn't okay. To have them acknowledge what they did to you." I thought about the voicemails again. Even in their desperation to reach me, not one of them had included the words, "I'm sorry." Not one had acknowledged that leaving a kindergartner alone in a major metropolitan train station might have been anything more than a harmless prank that went slightly wrong. "You know what the worst part was?" I said, staring into my coffee. "It wasn't even the first time. Do you remember me telling you about all their other jokes?" Sarah nodded. She'd heard these stories before, during late-night conversations, when the weight of my childhood felt too heavy to carry alone. "They forgot to pick me up from school so many times that I just started walking home, when I was 6. They'd say they were teaching me independence. They excluded me from family photos because it was funnier that way. They told me we were going to Disneyland for my 8th birthday, let me pack, drove me to the airport, and then laughed when they revealed we were actually just going to the grocery store." My voice was steady, matter of fact. I'd processed these memories years ago in therapy, turned them from sharp-edged weapons into dull facts. Every single time they said it was just a joke, that I was too sensitive, that I needed to learn to take things less seriously. I looked up at Sarah. The train station wasn't an anomaly, it was the natural progression of their parenting style. Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing. "What do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? For 20 years I'd imagined this moment. Sometimes I pictured them showing up at my door, begging for forgiveness. Sometimes I fantasized about having enough success that they'd see my name in the paper and realize what they'd lost. In my darker moments, I wondered if they'd ever even noticed I was gone. But I'd never imagined this, a death, an inheritance, and desperate voicemails from people who sounded like strangers. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore them completely. Just block the numbers and pretend this never happened." "And the other part?" I was quiet for a long time, watching the steam rise from my coffee. "The other part is curious." Not about reconciliation or forgiveness, but about what they tell themselves, how they've justified it all these years, whether they actually believe their own story. Sarah nodded slowly. You know, as your friend, I want to protect you from getting hurt again. But as a lawyer, I have to say, if there really is an inheritance involved, you might want to at least find out what's going on, even if you ultimately decide you don't want anything to do with them. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called them back. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered, breathless and eager. Emma? Emma, is that really you? It's me. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant, formal. Oh, sweetheart, I can't believe it's really you. You sound so grown up, so mature. We've missed you so much, baby girl. The endearments felt wrong coming from her mouth. Baby girl, sweetheart. These were words for someone who had earned them. I got your messages about the inheritance, I said, cutting through the false warmth. What exactly are you talking about? There was a pause. Well, there are some legal matters we need to discuss in person. Your father, he left specific instructions about you in his will, but we can't really talk about it over the phone. Can you come to the lawyer's office tomorrow? We're meeting at 10 a.m. Where? She gave me an address downtown. Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but we're so excited to see you again, to have our family back together. Our family. As if I'd ever been part of it, as if the last 20 years had been a temporary vacation instead of a complete reconstruction of my identity. I'll be there, I said, but this is about the legal matters only, nothing else. Of course, whatever you're comfortable with. We love you, Emma. We never stopped loving you. I hung up without responding to that last part. Love was a verb, not a feeling. And their actions had spoken loudly enough 20 years ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that 5-year-old girl in the purple dress, sitting alone on a train station bench, waiting for parents who were never coming back. She had believed in their love right up until the moment she couldn't anymore. She had trusted them completely, even as they proved themselves untrustworthy. But I wasn't her anymore. I was Emma Chen Davis now. I'd taken Sarah's last name when she legally became my emergency contact and chosen sister. I was a woman who paid her own bills, kept her own promises, and never, ever abandoned the people who mattered to her. Tomorrow I would walk into that lawyer's office, not as their lost daughter, but as the successful adult I'd become despite them. I would listen to whatever they had to say, make my decisions based on facts rather than emotions, and walk away with my dignity intact. After all, I'd learned a long time ago that I didn't need them to survive. The question was, were they finally going to learn that they needed me? The law office was everything I expected from a firm that handled wealthy families' estates. Marble floors, mahogany furniture, and the kind of hushed atmosphere that whispered of old money and older secrets. I arrived exactly at 10, wearing my best professional blazer and the confidence I'd spent 20 years building. They were already there when I walked into the conference room. I recognized her immediately, though she looked smaller than I remembered. My mother, I couldn't bring myself to think of her as Mom anymore, had aged in the way that expensive skincare could slow but not stop. Her hair was professionally coloured, her clothes clearly designer, but there were lines around her eyes that spoke of worry, or maybe guilt. Next to her sat a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe 30, with my same dark hair and the kind of nervous energy that comes from being thrust into an uncomfortable situation. When he looked up at me, his expression was pure confusion. Emma. The woman stood up, moving toward me with arms outstretched, as if she had every right to embrace me. My baby girl, you're so beautiful. You look just like... Please don't. I stepped back, keeping my voice level. Let's just get to the business at hand. The hurt that flashed across her face might have moved me once, but I'd learned to recognize performative emotions, and something about her reaction felt rehearsed. The man who was obviously my brother stood up awkwardly. I'm sorry, I'm Michael, Well, I guess I'm your brother, though I have to admit this is the first time I'm hearing about you. That stopped me cold. Excuse me? Michael looked between me and the woman, his confusion deepening. Mum, you said you had something important to tell me about Dad's will, but you never mentioned I had a sister. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned to stare at the woman who had given birth to me, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. You never told him about me, I said. It wasn't a question. She shifted uncomfortably, her hands twisting together. Well, it was complicated, sweetie. You were so young when we lost touch. And Michael was just a baby then. We thought it would be easier to pretend I never existed. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat from the head of the table. He was an older man with kind eyes who looked deeply uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his conference room. Perhaps we should proceed with the reading of the will, he suggested gently. Mr. Davis left very specific instructions regarding how this information should be shared. Michael was still staring at me like I was a ghost. Wait, hold on. You're telling me I have a sister who's been alive this whole time, and you never thought to mention her, not once in 30 years. Michael, honey, please try to understand. How long? I interrupted, my voice cutting through her excuses. How long after you left me at that train station before you had him? The colour drained from her face. Emma, it wasn't like that. How long? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. What train station? Mr. Harrison opened the folder in front of him with the deliberate movement of someone trying to regain control of a situation. Perhaps we should let Mr. Davis explain in his own words. He left a letter specifically for this moment. He pulled out an envelope with my name written on it, in handwriting I didn't recognize, but somehow knew belonged to my father. The man who had walked away from me at 5 years old, who had lived another 20 years without once trying to find me, who had died without ever apologizing. Emma, Mr. Harrison said gently, your father was very specific about this. He wanted you to hear this letter read aloud in front of your mother and brother before we discuss the details of his estate. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Mr. Harrison opened the letter and began to read in his measured, professional voice. Emma, if you're hearing this, then I'm gone, and you've finally been found. I want you to know that not a single day has passed in the last 20 years that I haven't thought about you. About what we did to you at that train station. About how we failed you in the most fundamental way parents can fail a child. Your mother will tell you it was a joke that went wrong. She'll say we never meant for it to go that far, that we thought you'd figure out how to get home, that children are more resilient than adults think. She might even believe that story herself by now. But I want you to know the truth. It wasn't a joke. It was cowardice. We were 23 years old, broke, and terrified. Your mother was pregnant again, with Michael. And we were barely keeping our heads above water with one child, let alone two. We told ourselves we were giving you an adventure, a chance to prove how smart and capable you were. But the truth is, we panicked. We made a choice that no parent should ever make, and we've lived with the consequences every day since. When the social services called us, when they said you were safe, but that we needed to come get you, we should have dropped everything and driven straight there. Instead, we talked ourselves into believing that you were better off without us, that we weren't good enough parents for someone as special as you, that you deserved better than what we could give you. We were right about that last part, at least. I felt something crack inside my chest. but I kept my face carefully neutral. Michael was staring at our mother with an expression of horror and disbelief. Mr. Harrison continued, "I know an apology means nothing now. I know that saying I'm sorry can't undo 20 years of abandonment, can't erase the damage we did to a 5-year-old who trusted us completely. But I need you to know that we were wrong. Catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. I've followed your life as much as I could from a distance. I know you became a graphic designer. I know you graduated summa cum laude from art school. I know you started your own business, and that you're successful and independent and everything we never taught you to be. I am proud of you in a way I have no right to be. I've left you 40% of my estate. It's not because I think money can fix what we broke. It's because you deserved better from us from the beginning. And this is the only way I know how to provide it now. The choice of what to do with it, whether to accept it or reject it, is entirely yours. Michael doesn't know about you yet. Your mother wanted to tell him when he was older, but older kept getting pushed further and further away until it became never. I hope you'll both forgive us for robbing you of the chance to know each other as siblings should. Emma, you owe us nothing. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, not even acknowledgement. If you choose to walk away from this room and never look back, I will understand. You've already proven that you're stronger than we ever were. But if some small part of you is curious about the family you came from, please know that your brother is a good man. He became the person we should have been, despite our example rather than because of it. Whatever you decide, I hope you know that you are loved, that you always were loved, even when we were too broken to show it properly. Your father, Robert Davis." The silence that followed the letter was absolute. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the distant sound of traffic outside, the whisper of air conditioning. But in the room itself, no one breathed. Michael was the first to speak, his voice shaking with anger. "You left her at a train station. You left my sister at a train station when she was 5 years old." "Michael, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" He stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. "Explain how you abandoned a kindergartner? Explain how you let me live my entire life thinking I was an only child when I had a sister out there somewhere? Explain how you never once, in 30 years, thought to mention that you committed what sounds like criminal child abandonment." I watched this confrontation with a strange sense of detachment. This anger, this outrage, this protection of me, it was what I might have expected from a family member 20 years ago. But it was coming from a stranger, albeit one who shared my DNA. "Son, please calm down." "Don't." Michael's voice was ice cold. "Don't call me son right now. I need to understand something. When you got pregnant with me, just months after abandoning Emma, did you ever think about going back for her? Did you ever consider that maybe, just maybe, if you could handle 2 kids, you could have handled 2 kids? The woman who had given birth to me, I couldn't think of her as my mother anymore, finally broke down. Real tears this time, not the performed emotion from earlier. "We were so young," she whispered. "We didn't know what we were doing. We thought—" "You thought what?" I spoke for the first time since the letter ended, my voice calm and clear. "You thought that abandoning one child would make you better parents to the next one." She looked at me with desperate eyes. "Emma, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly." I stood up, smoothing down my blazer. "You made a choice. You chose him over me. You chose your comfort over my safety. You chose to build a family that didn't include the child you already had." "That's not true," she said, but even as she said it, she seemed to realize how hollow it sounded. "Isn't it?" I turned to Michael, this brother I'd never known existed. "Tell me, in your 30 years of life, did they ever seem like they were grieving a lost child? Did they ever mention having another daughter? Did they keep my room? Did they celebrate my birthday? Did they do anything that suggested they considered me part of this family? Michael's face gave me my answer. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat again. The will also specifies the exact terms of the inheritance. The estate is valued at approximately $2.3 million. 40% would be roughly $920,000, plus the house in Portland that your father specifically wanted you to have. Nearly $1 million, a house, more money than I'd ever dreamed of having, from a man who couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone once in 20 years. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison continued. Your father left instructions that if you choose to accept the inheritance, the money comes with no strings attached. You never have to see or speak to your family again if you don't want to. But if you reject it, he wanted you to know that the money will be donated to children's charities in your name. Even in death, he was trying to manipulate me. Accept the money and feel guilty about taking it from people I owed nothing to, or reject it and know that my stubbornness cost charities nearly $1 million. Michael sat back down heavily. I can't believe this is my life right now. I woke up this morning thinking I was an only child, and now I find out my parents are people I don't even recognize. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. He had my father's nose and my mother's mouth, but his eyes were his own. They were honest eyes, confused and hurt, but not cruel. He was collateral damage in this situation, just like I had been. I need time to think about this, I said finally. Mr. Harrison, how long do I have to make a decision? There's no legal deadline, but I'd recommend within 60 days for tax purposes. I nodded and turned toward the door, then stopped. Without looking back, I said, Michael, if you want to talk, you can reach me through Mr. Harrison. Not about the money, just if you want to talk. I could hear my birth mother start to speak as I reached for the door handle. Emma, wait, please. No. I turned back one final time, looking directly at her. You had 20 years to reach out, 20 years to apologize, 20 years to try to make this right. You chose to stay silent until you needed something from me. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are and what I mean to you. I walked out of that conference room and didn't look back. But by the time I reached the parking garage, my phone was already buzzing. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in desperation disguised as love. It started with the flowers. Enormous bouquets arrived at my apartment every day, roses, lilies, exotic arrangements that must have cost hundreds of dollars each. The cards were signed Love, Mum and Dad, as if death couldn't interrupt their delusional parenting. Then came the gifts. A jewellery box arrived with a note that said, "This was supposed to be yours for your 16th birthday." A collection of children's books with, "We read these to Michael and always wondered if you'd like them too." A photo album filled with pictures of Michael growing up, with handwritten captions like, "This is when he lost his first tooth, just like you did." Except they had no idea when I'd lost my first tooth or who had been there to comfort me. Every gift felt like a fresh insult, a reminder of all the moments they'd been present for him and absent for me. The phone calls were relentless. My birth mother, I refused to think of her as anything else, called every morning at exactly 8 a.m., leaving voicemails that grew increasingly frantic as I continued to ignore them. "Emma, sweetheart, I know you're angry, but we can work through this. Family works through things. I keep thinking about you as a little girl, how much I loved you. That love never went away. Your father and I, we made mistakes, but we're older now, wiser. We can be the parents you deserved. Michael is asking about you every day. He wants to meet his sister properly. Don't punish him for our mistakes." That last message almost worked. Almost. Because Michael hadn't done anything wrong, and the part of me that had always wondered what it would be like to have a sibling was curious about this man who shared my eyes and my stubborn chin. But I knew what she was doing. She was using him as bait, the same way toxic people always used innocent parties to manipulate their targets back into dysfunction. Sarah watched this emotional siege with growing concern. On day 15, she showed up at my apartment with takeout and a determined expression. "We need to talk," she said, setting containers of Thai food on my coffee table. "And before you say you're fine, I can see that you're not sleeping, you've lost weight, and you nearly snapped at Mrs. Kim when she asked about your flowers yesterday." Mrs. Kim, Emma, the sweetest old lady in the building. I sank onto my couch, suddenly exhausted. "I just don't understand what they want from me. They want their guilt assuaged," Sarah said bluntly. "They want to rewrite history so they're not the villains of the story. They want you to forgive them so they can forgive themselves." "But I can't do that." "No," she agreed. "You can't, and you shouldn't. But Emma, you also can't let them steal your peace. You've built an incredible life. Don't let them disrupt it just because they've suddenly decided they want to play family." That night, I made a decision. I was going to meet with them one final time, not at a lawyer's office, not on their terms, but in a public place where I controlled the narrative. I was going to say everything I needed to say, make my position crystal clear, and then close this chapter permanently. I chose a busy coffee shop downtown for our meeting, public enough that there wouldn't be any dramatic scenes, but not so intimate that it felt like a family reunion. When I texted my birth mother the location and time, I included Michael in the message. If this was happening, he deserved to hear it too. They arrived together, and I could see the hope in her eyes as she spotted me at a corner table. Michael looked nervous but determined. He'd obviously been thinking about this meeting as much as I had. "Emma," she said, sliding into the seat across from me, "thank you so much for agreeing to see us. I've been hoping we could really talk, just the three of us, about moving forward as a family." "That's not why I'm here," I said calmly. "I'm here to give you closure, and to make some things very clear." Michael leaned forward. "Emma, I know this is awkward, and I know our parents, our mother, made terrible choices. But I'd really like to get to know you. Not because of the inheritance or the guilt or any of that. Just because you're my sister, and I never got the chance to have a sister." His sincerity was almost painful. In another universe, maybe we could have been close. Maybe we would have grown up protecting each other, sharing secrets, being the family neither of us got to experience. But this wasn't that universe. "Michael," I said gently, "I appreciate that. I really do. And you seem like a genuinely good person. But I need you to understand something. I'm not the sister you never had. I'm a stranger who happens to share your DNA. We have no history together, no shared experiences, no foundation for a relationship, and that's not your fault, but it's the reality." His face fell, but he nodded. "I understand, but maybe we could build something new, start from scratch." I shook my head. "I can't do that. Because every time I look at you, I'm reminded of the 20 years I spent wondering if I had siblings, if there was anyone out there who might understand what it felt like to grow up with parents who thought abandonment was funny. Every time I see your face, I see the life I should have had and the family that was kept from me." My birth mother reached across the table trying to take my hand. I pulled away. "Emma, please. We can't change the past, but we can change the future. We can be a family now." "No," I said, my voice steady and final. "We can't, because family isn't just DNA. It's showing up. It's consistency. It's choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. You had 20 years to choose me, and you chose silence instead. You chose to build a family that didn't include the daughter you already had. We thought you were better off. Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop with the excuses. Stop trying to rewrite history to make yourselves feel better. You left a 5-year-old child alone at a train station and never looked back. Own that. Live with that. but don't ask me to pretend it was anything other than what it was." Michael was staring at his hands. "What can we do? How can we make this right?" "You can't," I said simply. "Some things can't be fixed, Michael. Some damage is permanent. The little girl who needed parents died in that train station 20 years ago. The woman sitting here now was born from learning to survive without them." I stood up, pulling my purse over my shoulder. "I'm rejecting the inheritance, all of it. I don't want your money, your house, or your guilt offerings. I want you to take that $20,000 and donate it to organizations that help abandoned children find real families. Do something useful with your guilt instead of trying to buy your way back into my life." My birth mother started crying. "Emma, please, you're our daughter. We love you." I looked down at her, feeling nothing but pity. "Love is a verb," I said quietly. "It's something you do, not something you feel. You may have loved the idea of me, but you never loved me enough to fight for me. You never loved me enough to choose me. You never loved me enough to put my needs before your own comfort." I turned to Michael one last time. "I hope you have a good life. I hope you find people who choose you every day, who show up when they say they will, who never make you wonder if you matter. Everyone deserves that kind of family." I walked away from that coffee shop and felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. That evening, Sarah came over with pizza and wine, and we sat on my couch in comfortable silence. My phone was finally quiet. I'd blocked all their numbers after sending a final text explaining my decision about the inheritance. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Free," I said finally. "For 20 years, I've carried this weight of wondering, what if? What if they came back? What if they apologized? What if they wanted me? Now I know, and it doesn't change anything about who I am or the life I've built." "No regrets?" I shook my head. The 5-year-old girl who got left at that train station wanted parents who would love her unconditionally. The woman I am now knows that some people are incapable of that kind of love. And that's okay, because I found my real family anyway. I looked around my apartment, at the photos of Sarah and me travelling together, at the artwork from friends who'd supported my business, at the plants I'd nurtured and the space I'd created for myself. This was my family. This was my home. This was the life I'd built from the ashes of that abandoned little girl's dreams. "Besides," I added, smiling at Sarah, "some families are born, others are chosen. I chose well." My phone stayed silent after that. No more flowers, no more gifts, no more desperate voicemails. They had finally gotten the message that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And for the first time in 20 years, I slept through the night without dreams of train stations.